To leak Chrisean Rock and Jr.'s medical records from when he was born, listing the list of issues that he had. One of the issues being alcohol fetal syndrome, another one dealing with his ophthalmology, dealing with his sight, something else dealing with pulmonary, dealing with his lungs.
It's saying that he got all type of stuff and how she was being neglectful.
Rock. So there's been some medical documents that have been released that people are saying are the medical documents of Junior, Chrisean's son. I'm going to tell you where to go to watch this on YT in a minute.
Here, the drama always finds a microphone and the tea never stops brewing. Once more, greetings. Since Chris and Rock's relationship recently became sincere, I want to get right to the point. Once more, it's about her child, Chrisean Jr., but not in the way that often garners media attention, to be honest. It's more significant and a little melancholy. Here's the thing, then, on TikTok and Twitter. Screenshots have been going viral. These are fictitious baby Chrisean Jr. medical records. However, we want to keep things legal and civil, so we won't be posting any of those here. However, because the internet is buzzing about those documents, I shall examine what they say. There are annotations in the pictures and health issues are mentioned, although there is no evidence. It is undoubtedly the type of thing that provokes heated debates. According to certain facts, the baby might not be consistently taken to appointments. Social media has gone crazy over a single detail. There is a lot of irrational judgment, fear, and accusations. We shouldn't pretend that we're brand new, though, because Chrisean has been the subject of tremendous scrutiny. Ever since she made her pregnancy public, she is closely observed and made into news, as are the locations she visits, the people she is with, and the way she carries the baby. People are acting hastily in response to the release of these purported medical screenshots. Not just jumping, but jumping first, the strangest aspect, though, is this. Everyone else is out there making snap decisions as if they were free samples. And the subject itself is seldom ever asked. Who first made the previously mentioned documents public?
Okay, who's out here breaking HIPAA laws? Apparently, there's some medical records of Chrisean and her baby floating around, and I don't know if it's true. This is all alleged, but I'm just gonna share what I learned. Maybe, allegedly. So it says that the baby suffers from fetal alcohol syndrome and neonatal abstinence syndrome. So neonatal abstinence syndrome is basically the baby is withdrawing from opioids, some sort of, but they're thinking either opioids or cocaine in this case. And allegedly, but he also allegedly suffers from spasticity, which is like a neurological disorder that makes it hard for people or babies to move their limbs. He also suffers from seizure disorder and CVI. Now, CVI is cortical visual impairment, which is just, it means that a part of his brain has been damaged, the part of his brain that controls his vision. So, he has blindness. Like a lot of people, I've heard people say this, but I just didn't believe it. But oh my God. It also says that he should be in palliative care. Now, I work in hospice, and a lot of people, they believe that palliative care and hospice is interchangeable, but it's not. The palliative care kind of focuses more on prolonging the life of the child or person in general. But in this case, if he should be on palliative care, he's got a very serious medical condition, and she needs to be taking care of him. How? As a mother, do you know these diagnoses, or do you know any of this information about your son and not help him in any way? Continue to live the same lifestyle that you lived before you had him. When you become a mother or father, but in this case, we're talking about mothers. When you become a mother, your life changes. You need to change, to adapt, to make sure that you are putting your child above yourself. especially someone who has the serious medical issues that Junior has. Pathetic. She's pathetic. But all of these things are incredibly serious. I have literally no words. Chrisean disgusts me.
If the records are authentic, there has been a privacy violation. There was obviously more drama going on behind the scenes. Because someone made the effort to obtain this information, it appears somewhat random. Let's be honest. What comes next? It's even more startling. Of course, I am not here to claim that the documents mentioned above are accurate. I'm not claiming they're untrue, though. I'm simply sharing what others are talking about online, and looking at what they're seeing in these articles that get a lot of reading. Given that this is now intensifying into a full-fledged online storm according to screenshots purportedly taken from medical records, baby Chrisean Jr. tested positive for opiates, cocaine, and alcohol after birth. Yes, all three. The records also include a list of additional illnesses that are purportedly connected to the infant's health issues: infant abstinence syndrome, cortical visual impairment, spasticity, and seizure disorders are among the conditions covered. These are not just significant problems, particularly in babies, but they also have increased internet anxiety and conjecture.
Apparently, somebody that leaked Chrisean Rock and Jr.'s medical records from when he was born, listing the list of issues that he had. One of the issues being alcohol fetal syndrome, another one dealing with his ophthalmology, dealing with his sight, something else dealing with pulmonary, dealing with his lungs. I'm gonna tell y'all like this: there's so much fake news going on right now. I'm gonna take this with a grain of salt, even though the person who posted it tagged Blueface and Carlissa in it. Also proving that she didn't take no prenatal vitamins when she was pregnant. Listen, y'all, when you have a baby, there are so many tests that are performed during, after your labor, right? So if the doctors found something that could have been a cause due to the neglect of the mother, she would have had some type of consequence. Chrisean suffered no consequence, which is why I take this so-called news with a grain of salt. But we all know something going on. So I don't know if the hospital that she had the baby at, it is a well-known hospital for celebrities, and they do tend to cover shit up. But I'm pretty sure nobody not about to risk losing their license, misdiagnosing a child who's clearly having all of these difficulties and developmental delays. They're not gonna write something like, oh, the baby is healthy, when the baby not healthy. Like, I don't know what's going on. Maybe they had advised her to get the baby certain kind of help, and they probably worded it on the paperwork as if it was natural causes and not due to the neglect of the mama. I don't know. Who the fuck knows? All I know is there's a story going around showing fake or true diagnosis and records from the baby. I don't know. But I'm gonna look more into it, y'all. I'll come back if they,
For the uninitiated, cortical visual impairment, or CVI, alters how the brain interprets visual information. It is not the same as blindness, even if the eyes are healthy. The brain struggles to absorb visual information. This illness is harmful. Again, everything discussed here is predicated on the accusations. However, the content in those posts shocks and worries some people. Additionally, an entire team of medical professionals is reportedly already providing care for the infant. Cardiologists, neurologists, orthopedic physicians, and probably a host of other specialists are among them. If this proves to be accurate, the infant is most likely dealing with a very difficult medical diagnosis from the beginning. Imagine the awful impression it conveys. But this is the point at which people become quite irritated. According to one section of the purported screenshot, the mother, who is purportedly Chrisean, confesses to regularly using alcohol and cocaine while pregnant. The assertion is sufficient to provoke a considerable deal of online indignation, even though it is important to stress that these accusations are unsupported.
So there's been some medical documents that have been released that people are saying are the medical documents of Jr, Chrisean's son. I'm going to tell you where to go to watch this on YT in a minute. So I don't know if these are actually Jr.'s medical records, but I will say that the medical records appear to have been written by a medical professional, just the terminology that was used and stuff. Okay? I do believe there's somebody's medical records, all right? Now, the one thing that makes me a little leery about it is it says that the mother admitted to substance It listed some substances that she admitted to. I just find it hard to believe that Chrisean would ever even admit that.
If even half of this is true, it creates a whole new debate. These days, topics like parental rights, accountability, and even the potential for legal repercussions are discussed. Let me clarify, though, that none of these documents have been formally verified. The truth about them is still unknown. The very personal nature of this stuff, however, is concerning. And the fact that it is making the rounds online demonstrates how messed up things have gotten. This leads us to the main cause of the internet's popularity. The screenshots were initially posted by an account called Kinkase. When I attempted to check that profile myself, it was entirely missing, disappeared into thin air. No one is certain if it was disabled or removed. However, people can't ignore the level of suspicion. Now, a lot of people are speculating that the account's reporting might have been caused by the uploaded content. To be honest, social media was on fire in a matter of seconds. There was absolutely no reluctance on the part of this individual. Regarding the status of baby Chrisean Jr., they said that Blueface, Chrisean, and her group had misled. They contend that the public was misinformed about the baby's health and well-being. However, the supporting evidence for these accusations is quite different. They show a far worse situation than the public was told. What truly gets people talking are the feelings conveyed in these messages and the contrast with the joyful image. These days, the focus is on what might be kept secret, not just rumors.
So allegedly, Chrisean Jr.'s medical records been leaked. I don't know how true it is, but it's saying that he got all type of stuff and how she was being neglectful. But my thing is, if the doctors test the babies after they were born and they see that something, like if she was doing substances or something, she would have had to suffer the consequences. So I'm not sure if everything is true or not, but whoever did leak that is about to face some serious charges because the HIPAA laws. Like, why would y'all leak?
The post claims that the child's condition speaks for itself, and that there is no defense of what is obvious in the original post. Even online people who continued to defend Chrisean were made fun of. One such statement is that child is the truth. Don't ignore it any longer, please. The statement was straightforward. The weather was freezing, and everyone was in complete shock, to be clear. There is no official confirmation of any of this. We don't know the screenshots' authenticity or how they were obtained. However, the rate at which this story is becoming viral on the internet is real. Threads are going viral on Reddit. Apart from their prior actions, TikTokers are also analyzing live streams and stitching videos with hot hashtags, and some individuals even tagging CPS. Twitter is in complete chaos. The harm has already been done in the court of public opinion. Regardless of the veracity of the story, if these statements are false, there is serious defamation. However, if even a small portion of it is accurate, the repercussions could be severe. People who blindly supported Chrisean are beginning to doubt everything they believe to be true. The internet splits completely at this point. We knew it from the beginning. Some folks are going crazy about the report. Some claim that this is actually a campaign of smears to damage her reputation. Everyone is watching the drama unfold with great interest, as if it were the next big Netflix documentary series. I had to research this a bit, indeed. Wouldn't those drugs have been removed right away if the infant had been born with them in his system by now? Shouldn't Chrisean be the subject of an investigation? That's the justification that many people employ, but the reality is more complex, according to my research. When a newborn has a positive drug test, hospitals are legally obligated to alert Child Protective Services or the local child welfare agency. The law is that, particularly in cases like this one where many medications are needed. However, a number of factors determine what happens next. The baby isn't always taken away by CPS right away. The infant may remain here if a parent is cooperative or has a care plan in place in advance. While the child is still living at home, CPS may conduct a covert investigation, visit or watch the youngster, the state, the hospital, and the severity of the illness are some of the factors. There would have undoubtedly been an investigation if Chrisean had admitted to using drugs while pregnant and the nurses had noticed it. But proving long-term risk, harm, or purpose becomes more difficult. Therefore, just because nothing has transpired in the public eye doesn't mean that nothing is happening behind the scenes. These systems move with great force, very slowly and silently. Have faith that someone is now looking into the charges more to see if they are true. However, the majority of people are unaware that a report does not always automatically result in its deletion. I was also shocked since a lot of people are making rash decisions. Let me explain in simple terms. If a newborn tests positive for drugs, the hospital is required to notify CPS, as was claimed in this case. The law requires it, but CPS doesn't suddenly take the infant away. They then examine the entire problem. They inquire as to whether the child is being fed, getting medical attention, and living in a safe and sanitary environment? Are they receiving treatment or support from their families? CPS is essentially trying to determine whether this is a one-time event or an ongoing threat. The parent may temporarily remove the child while they come up with a strategy. If they see any warning signs, they might need counseling, parenting classes, or home visits. Additionally, it takes a while for a case file to close after it has been opened. To ensure progress, a caseworker may conduct routine check-ins. However, if the parent is making an effort, maintaining personal hygiene, and sticking to the plan with some restrictions, the baby may stay. The CPS is still involved if the baby wasn't taken out right away. One may have a file in their system at the same time now. This problem, which is more complex than it first appears, is therefore being treated very seriously. It becomes more complex at this point.